In a world where everyone can ride and tame dragons, Ash Blake stands out as the only one who can't, despite having a dragon mark. Hated and ridiculed by everyone, his life changes when he accidentally awakens a dragon girl instead, the strongest one ever. A holy dragon looks at the body of a mutilated boy who puts his life in danger to fulfill the wish of a girl. The dragon takes its human form and approaches the boy, whom she calls Ash Blake, and revives him. Later, under the red moon, the boy regains consciousness with his now tattooed arm beside a woman who calls herself Navi. She starts to kiss his body, saying it is a ritual for someone to be born and to entrust her to him. Ash wakes up with a jolt the next morning, confused by his dream. At the Unsullivan Academy, the students are enthusiastic about the Ares Dragonar Festival. Ash walks into the hallway, and the students start talking about him, calling him the school's most problematic child, as his dragon hasn't been born yet. One student even bets that his dragon will be problematic as well. This comment makes him snap, and he is about to confront the guy when his friend Raymond stops him. Another student, Max, reminds him that they're seniors now, so he should behave. In the classroom, the teacher tells her class that their life as seniors has officially begun. She reminds them that dragons are extremely special entities, and their markings as breeders are portals to the astral flow, linking them to their par, or the partner dragon born from within them. With this, no one aside from the master with whom it shares life force can ride a par. After the class, Raymond approaches Ash and questions him about his ability to ride other people's pars. However, Ash tells him he's asking the wrong person. Just then, a female student, Sylvia, enters the classroom and receives wary looks from her classmates because of her personality and noble rank as the fourth princess. As they pass through the announcement board, Raymond asks Ash if he is joining the dragon race. Students begin to flock around the student president, Rebecca, who is the strongest dragon rider in the academy. Later, on the school grounds, the start of Dragonar battle training begins. Ash thanks Raymond for lending him his dragon, Bridget. The students mount up their dragon, and the princess immediately shows off her skills. Ash enjoys his battle and is performing fine when he accidentally bumps into the princess's dragon. However, the incident infuriates the princess, who slaps Ash across the face. She calls him careless as he's not riding his own dragon, mocking him for having not graced with a par yet, and comments that his dragon must have already been dead. This puts the boy on edge, saying that he won't tolerate such a comment. Sylvia then challenges him to the upcoming Ares Dragon Festival and declares that if he beats her standing, she will take back her words and apologize. With confidence, Ash accepts her challenge. The Ares Dragon Festival finally arrives. As Rebecca gives an opening speech, Ash thanks Bridget for being his partner once again. The student council president continues to motivate the students, declaring that she'll have a date with the victorious dragon rider, which earns an eruption of screams from the students. Sylvia comes up on the stage to give a short speech as the competitor's representative. As she exits, the students talk about how her brother Julius is imprisoned for killing his dragon. Ash watches the princess walk through the talking crowd, thinking that she's suffering more than she lets on. The race officially begins, and the female students immediately block the princess's path. Witnessing this, Ash assists the princess and distracts the female students so Sylvia can surprise attack them, leaving them behind. The students race through different terrains, which challenge their determination to win. Meanwhile, Ash takes a break in a forest, apologizing to Bridget for the exhausting race. He plans to drop out of the race, but he doesn't feel bad about losing to the princess, as he had fun racing with her. Just then, he hears a weird noise coming from the forest and checks it. He sees a wrecked airship and a man with a mask standing on top of it, who tells him it's a Zephyros aircraft that was used in the last war. Ash notices the man holding an Imperial weapon and asks if he's an Imperial soldier. The man doesn't answer and tells him that he has an immature dragon within him, revealing his ability to see dragons within because of the curse he bears. Just then, a girl attacks him, warning him to stay away from her master, whom she called Milgos. The boy escapes from the girl, who chases him throughout the forest. Eventually, she catches him, but hesitates to end him, as if she has seen something shocking. As she gets away, the cliff gives off, causing her to fall. However, Ash comes to her rescue and falls below instead. Milgos calls the girl Anya and tells her they should go. Meanwhile, as Ash continues to fall to his death, his dragon markings suddenly emit a bright light and give birth to his dragon in the human form of a beautiful girl. Shocked, he suddenly remembers his dream of a woman, telling him she'll be reborn again. Ash looks intently at the girl sleeping in his arms, wondering if she is his par. The girl slowly awakens and is shocked to see him while she's sleeping, sending him flying into the lake. She reminds him not to stare at a lady's face while she's asleep. The boy asks if she's his par, which she confirms. Hearing this, Ash formally introduces himself as her master, but the girl refuses the idea, saying that she's the master in their setup, which confuses the boy. That night in Ash's room, the dragon girl proudly occupied Ash's bed to sleep, telling the young boy to sleep on the floor instead. The next day, the student council president, along with Max, visits him to check on his newly awakened par. However, this causes misunderstandings as the girl is undressed, and there are love marks all over Ash's body. The boy clarifies that it's the baby dragon's play marks, and they didn't sleep on the same bed. The dragon points out that she doesn't need any clothing because she's a mighty dragon. Flustered, he covers her exposed body with a blanket. Rebecca then gives him clothes for the dragon and informs him that Dr. Cornwell is currently determining the right way to deal with his dragon. Until then, she'll stay inside his dorm. As they tour around the town, the people gawk at the girl who's now wearing the academy's uniform. Suddenly, her stomach rumbles, prompting the boy to buy her a meal. After being energized by the sweet she eats, the dragon suddenly feels hot and starts licking the boy, which shocks everyone. Just then, the princess arrives and sees the commotion, accusing the boy of doing an illicit activity in broad daylight. The dragon sneezes, and it brings a gush of wind, making the princess's undergarment exposed. Flustered, the boy is caught off guard and receives a beating from the princess. Later, Sylvia's servant, Cosette, makes the dragon drink medicine that will combat the alcoholic effect of Anthar from the crepe she consumed. The master thanks her, who's clueless that a certain food can make a dragon drunk. The princess mocks him for being oblivious, but apologizes for her harsh words earlier regarding his dragon and leaves. The duo then strolls around the city, buying necessities for the dragon. Taking a break, Ash realizes that the dragon doesn't have a name yet, and names her Eco, after the first breeder's par. After the dragon acknowledges her name, the star brand in Ash's arms activates, signaling that their bond is complete and that their astral energies now flow together. Eco goes into the bathroom, clueless that someone is watching her in the dark with ill intent. Meanwhile, Sylvia and Cosette spot Ash peeking inside the women's bathroom. Misunderstanding him, Sylvia scolds him for being warped. However, he explains that Eco went inside and never came out. The two girls go inside and discover Fafnirit dust, which suggests that his dragon might have been abducted. Anxious, the boy attempts to run after the abductors, but the princess stops him, saying that he must use the astral flow within him. He frees his star brand and focuses on his connection with Eco to locate her. As he remembers images of her, astral flow in butterfly form manifests, leading him to Eco. Meanwhile, in a room, Eco is strapped to a bed and being experimented on by a woman who's interested in a dragon born looking like a human. Furthermore, the woman finds it strange that Eco has no recollection of her dragon memories and has been denied access by the Dragwarth. Since she has no recollection, the woman plans on making her body remember by dissecting her. Eco's screams can be heard from where Ash and the others are. He tries to open a door, but to no avail, prompting the princess to use her power to forcefully break in. Upon entering the room, Ash demands the woman unhand his dragon. However, the woman refuses, saying that she's only following the Academy's request. Hearing this, Sylvia realizes that the woman is Dr. Angela Cornwell, the researcher on dragons. Refusing to give up her interesting sample, she activates the oracle field, forbidding them to summon their dragons and escape the facility. She commands them to watch quietly as she dissects Eco and casts magic to make them sleep. Affected by the magic, the boy struggles to stay awake, making Eco frustrated. She commands him to save her, resulting in her magic pouring into him through the astral flow. The boy easily breaks the magic circle, demanding that Angela give him back his dragon. Eco is freed and hugs the boy for comfort, but beats him when she feels his hand on her. Meanwhile, Cosette, who has seemingly been awake all this time, smiles at the sight of them. Later, in Ash's room, he watches his dragon contentedly sleeping and fondly touches her hair. The next day, Ash and Sylvia are shocked to learn that their new homeroom teacher is none other than Angela Cornwell herself. Later, Sylvia is tending to her dragon's needs. She vows to fulfill her promise to a boy to become an archdragonar. Just then, hearing a commotion, the princess comes to the knight's aid in capturing an unruly dragon. Meanwhile, at the student council office, Rebecca continues to convince Ash to join the council and questions him about the sketchy pair he ran across in the woods the other day. She suspects that they're Imperial spies that the Zephyros Empire sent to keep track of them. Just then, they hear the sirens blaring. As they look outside the window, they see the princess wrestling the dragon out of rivalry with Ash. Rebecca points out that Sylvia is threatened by his ability to ride others as par, resulting in her reckless move. To save the princess, the student council president jumps out of the window, calls forth her dragon, Ku, and transforms into her arch mode. Later, as Eiko devours her crepe, Ash recalls the incident earlier, which fortunately turned out fine. Distracted, Eiko berates him and asks about the tourists flocking to see the statue of Saint Durham. The boy explains that Durham La Tremont is a first-generation paladin from 500 years ago. Eiko recognizes Durham's armor as an arch, which makes Ash comment that he's excited to be an archdragonar with her. Flustered, the girl tells him that she's not going to make it happen. Rebecca and Sylvia approach Ash and Eiko and invite them to join their date at a restaurant. Elsewhere, Anya reports to Milgaus that the town is peaceful and has forgotten about the war. The master expects this, vowing to make the people recall and free his sword from its shell, and calls forth a gigantic dragon monster. Panicking, the people immediately run to safety as the beast wreaks havoc. The students are shocked to see the monster's rotten flesh, and Eiko bravely confronts the undead dragon, which grabs her with its tentacles. The undead attempt to engulf the town in flames, but Rebecca prevents this by summoning her magical spear. She hurls her weapon at the dragon, which decapitates it. But to their surprise, the beast grows back its head. In retaliation, the dragon attacks Rebecca, who orders Ash to evacuate the princess immediately. The boy hurries to rescue Sylvia. To snap her back to reality, he apologizes and slaps her face. When she wakes up from her trance, he asks her to summon Lancelot and let him ride her dragon to save everyone. Sylvia summons Lancelot and lends him to Ash. Meanwhile, Eiko's consciousness wanders to the High Dragon workshop, where Navi teaches her dragon lessons that can save Ash, who's currently in danger. Navi tells Eiko that Ash stands no chance against the Necromancia, which is an undead dragon resurrected by artificial means. The woman reveals that the workshop was built by the Sacred Maestro as a shared space for craftworking dragons. She points out that the arch is a made-to-order set of armor that Eiko needs to put together to fit Ash. Navi gives her the boy's sizes that she obtained before Eiko was born. Knowing that Ash is in danger, the dragon starts making the arch. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Ash barely holds on while riding Lancelot. However, as he's certain that his dragon is still alive, he vows to never give up. Seeing his determination, Eiko creates the arch for her master. As Ash is about to get slain, the arch activates, giving the boy powerful armor. Trying to hide her embarrassment, Eiko refuses to admit that she created the armor just for the boy, who expresses his gratitude to her. He turns to the princess, and he tells her not to try riding other dragons as she has the best partner, and he thanks her for lending him Lancelot. Seeing him ride Necromancia, Milgaus tells Anya to retreat. Meanwhile, Ash sees the undead dragon's memories, discovering that it had a master once. Hearing the Necromancia's wish, Ash calls forth his divine blade and slashes the dragon, putting it to rest. Because of this, Eiko is freed and free falls as she holds hands with Ash. Later, the group of friends celebrates Ash's debut as a Dragonar. Impressed by their potential, Rebecca urges Ash and Sylvia once again to join the student council, which the two accept. As they are now officially her members, she kisses the two on their cheeks, and Eiko beats up Ash. They eventually cheered to celebrate their wins. Inside the forest, young Sylvia is injured and wants to see the mother dragon. She is approached by a young boy who urges her to give up because of her condition. However, she refuses, as she badly needs a boyfriend. Understanding her frustration, he offers to carry her so they can see the mother dragon together. In her room, the princess recalled her childhood memories and wondered about the young boy she met years ago. Meanwhile, Ash picks up a dragon-stuffed toy in his room, not recalling where he got it. At the academy, Rebecca formally introduces to the students the new student council members. Sylvia makes a short speech about being in charge of public morals, while Ash takes on the stage of being in charge of general affairs. He implores everyone to bear with him as he assumes his new role, and to his surprise, everyone cheers up for him. Lastly, Rebecca introduces Eiko as the new member of the council. Clad in her glamorous gown, Eiko gives out a roar, intending to make herself look cool, but the students laugh at her adorableness instead. Irritated, she complains that humans are foolish. Trying to cheer her up, the boy convinces her that the students want to befriend her because she's interesting, uplifting her mood. Meanwhile, Ash's new role in the council includes taking down the flyers posted without permission. From the board, Eiko picks out a flyer that seeks members for the Silver Knight fan club, which is essentially Ash's fan club. After he saves the town from the necromancia, a group of girls enter Ash's classroom and introduce themselves as members of the Silver Knight fan club. The president of the club, Jessica, addresses everyone, asking if anyone recognizes the hero who defeated the necromancia. As they're in the middle of the study hall, Sylvia asks them to leave. However, Jessica refuses to leave as she aims to bear the Silver Knight's children, which shocks the friends. She retracts the statement after the vice president, Lynette, points out that it's a violation of their code. She then reports that the princess was present at the time of the necromancia incident, which means she knows the identity of the Silver Knight. As Sylvia denies this, Rebecca arrives, saying she has to meet the student council members. Seeing her, Jessica demands to receive information about the Silver Knight from the council, but the president whispers something in her ear, which makes her flustered, and leave. Later, Ash discovers that Jessica isn't of nobility and comes from the lineage that serves Rebecca's family. Whenever the girl starts having trouble, Rebecca starts to threaten to expose her to make her back down. However, she points out that once Jessica finds the Silver Knight, she'll have a chance to become a nobility in their country, which values dragons. If she is to marry the arch-bearing Silver Knight, her future will be guaranteed. So, if she finds out Ash's true identity, there is no doubt that the girl will be dead set on pursuing him. Back to the main topic, she informs everyone that the first princess, Veronica, will visit the academy after the attack, but this seems to terrify Sylvia. Back in Sylvanus, the Iron Maiden, who turns out to be Veronica, orders her servants to head to the academy. Meanwhile, Anya disguises herself as a flower vendor to collect information about Ash, and sees girls her age who all dress up nicely. Back at the school, Ash is concerned about Sylvia, who is still depressed about her sister's impending visit. Cosette reveals that Veronica wasn't selected as the breeder, and rebelled by making herself strong and earning the title of Iron Blood Valkyrie. She used to train the young princess, whom she subjected to harsh drills, and so she became a symbol of terror for Sylvia. The next day, Sylvia prepares for the arrival of her sister, remembering the promise she made to the boy about being an upstanding knight. She joins everyone waiting in the academy, reassuring Ash that she's all right. Veronica's airship approaches, fascinating everyone with how majestic it is. Just then, the first princess alights Sylvanus, gracing everyone with her presence. Veronica calls for her sister Sylvia, who right away shows her respect. However, the first princess attacks her, revealing that the girl is actually Cosette. Insulted, the princess demands to know where her sister is. As if on cue, Sylvia comes in running late and immediately shakes in dread upon meeting her older sister. Veronica enjoys her fear, declaring that she will face punishment for disappointing her. She lifts her enormous sword and directs it towards Sylvia, tearing the younger princess's garments and shaming her in front of everyone. Unable to bear it any longer, Ash intervenes, rebuking the princess for humiliating her own sister. Confirming his identity, Veronica orders her servant Glenn to seize Ash, and they depart from the academy. Inside the Sylvanus, a servant named Prim compliments Ash on his dashing appearance in a suit. Although she cheerfully performs her duties, she often does so clumsily, which eventually tires the boy. He then finds a book about the legendary Silver Knight that catches his attention and reads it. As he immerses himself in the book, Prim informs him that Veronica has arrived and is looking for him. The servant then brings him to the undressing room, where he should unclothe himself before joining the princess. To set an example, Prim exposes herself first, and the servants proceed to do the same to Ash. Meanwhile, from the other undressing room, Angela and Rebecca unclothe themselves, ready to join the princess in her bath. During the bath, the princess questions the two about the recent attack. The student council president suggests that the perpetrator has imperial ties, while the professor reveals that necromancia is a product of engineering. which is a forte of the Zephyros Empire. Ash hesitantly joins them, asking why he needs to bathe with them, and is surprised to see Eco as well. However, Prim shows them the anther-scented bath salts she incorporated into the bath, making Eco drunk. Looking at them, Veronica is quite disappointed that they're the heroes who defeated the necromancia. Wrapped in a towel, Sylvia arrives and is shocked to see Ash with her sister. As they bathe together, Veronica informs Sylvia of a potential marriage proposal, expressing her own disinterest in continuing the royal lineage and her preference for military matters. She suggests Sylvia marry one of her knights, Glenn, to bear a royal child, but Sylvia refuses, aspiring to become an archdragonar with Lancelot. Unimpressed, Veronica mocks her, pointing out that she won't survive on the battlefield because of her weak resolve. Ash defends Sylvia, crediting her for successfully defeating the necromancia. He then accuses the first princess of underestimating his sister's potential. Giving her little sister a chance, Veronica tells Sylvia to prove her dream in a match. The next day, Sylvia attends the match. However, she immediately gets defeated by Rebecca. Later, she wakes up in her room and is surprised to see Ash beside her. Realizing that she failed, she chastises herself for being a weak dragonar. Just then, Rebecca knocks on the door, revealing Glenn, who has come to check on the princess's condition, and informing her that Veronica forbids her from accompanying her during the town tour. Sylvia questions Glenn about his willingness to accept the marriage proposal, and the man expresses his obedience to the first princess's command. As he leaves, Ash criticizes the man for not having his own will. However, Sylvia shares that Glenn wasn't always the cold man he is now. However, after his best friend died, who was the first prince, he became a different person. Meanwhile, Rebecca informs Ash that the council has a meeting tomorrow about the first princess's tour around the town. Unfortunately, they can't give Sylvia any tasks because of her predicament. The next morning, Eco drunkenly jumps onto Ash. Eco immediately falls asleep, leaving the boy stunned. Just then, Rebecca appears, flustering the boy even more. She then meets her members, telling them that they must pay attention to the princess's safety as there is a threat of assassination against her. She shows them a photo of a woman who once attempted to hurt the princess and tells them to be careful of her. As the town is busy finalizing the event, Veronica shows up and checks the progress, making Ash think that she's reckless about her safety. Meanwhile, Sylvia is in church, praying before Saint Valeria, repenting for her sins, when Jessica shows up, imploring the deity to wind her up with the Silver Knight, which makes the princess incredulous. Just then, a girl riding a dragon who calls herself Avdosha crashes the cathedral, declaring death to all sinners. Meanwhile, inside the church, Sylvia looks at Jessica, who sacrificed, disguising herself as the youngest princess. Even as they unclothed and bound her, the girl never shed a single tear, displaying her bravery. Included among the hostages, Anya eyes Avdosha, thinking of revealing that she's a fellow Tantalos, but ultimately deciding against it, fearing that it will complicate things. Back at the Sylvanus, Rebecca comes up with a plan to send Ash to the church as a negotiator, buying them time to use the underground passage and infiltrate the cathedral. Ash successfully enters the cathedral, informing Avdosha that they have their guns pointed at the church and refusing to give in. Having nothing to lose, she confesses that she has a sister she lost long ago, and her intention is to inflict upon Veronica the pain of losing her own siblings. Concerned about the princess, Ash urges Eco to hasten the creation of the arch, which can stop the mechanical bomb. Meanwhile, Anya accidentally makes a baby cry, getting the attention of Avdosha, who then decides to sacrifice her and the baby to agitate Veronica. As the terrorists reach for the hostages, Sylvia intervenes, revealing her identity as the fourth princess of the kingdom. Recognizing her as Veronica's sister, Avdosha immediately tears her clothing, making her scream in humiliation. Exposed, she remembers all her failures and how her sister treated her as a weakling. Despite this, she doesn't succumb to her misery and recalls the promise she made to the boy who saved her. Determined to be an upstanding knight, she frees herself from her fears and declares herself to be a paladin. Just then, the archdragonars appear, attacking the terrorists and saving the hostages. Escaping from his captors, Ash confronts Avdosha, who almost slashes him with her blade. As her dragon is about to devour him, Eco produces the new arch for Ash, protecting him from harm. Avdosha tries to escape, threatening him with the mechanical bomb. However, the boy activates an ice spell, freezing the girl's dragon the bomb, and Avdocha as well. Discovering that he's the Silver Knight, Jessica throws herself at Ash, shocking the guy. Fortunately, Rebecca appears, helping him escape. He then finds Sylvia, whom he compliments for being amazing during the fight earlier. He then offers to carry her out, bringing her a rush of nostalgia. The next day, Ash is greeted by the news that Jessica is joining the student council, much to her dismay. Arriving at the conference room, he is shocked to see Avdocha, revealing that the battle was Veronica's scheme all along. Avdocha admits that she was part of the rebel group 5 years ago, but has since surrendered to Veronica and began working as her agent. Through working under the royalty, she aims to find her sister, Shamara. Just then, Veronica plays the recording of the voice of Sylvia swearing to be a paladin, teasing her sister. As the two banter, Cosette reveals that Sylvanus is named after Sylvia, proving that Veronica is actually fond of her youngest sister. Later, the students watch as Sylvanus departs into the setting sun. Eiko is frantically running away in the dark, but she trips and falls to the ground. Several tentacles drag her up and constrict her body. She cries out to Ash, but a voice tells her that it's time to end things. The little girl wakes up in the dorm, sweaty and gasping for air. Morning comes, and the young boy opens his eyes to see his companion worriedly staring at her mattress. Hearing her bashfully say something about her bed, he immediately thinks that she must have let out dragon discharge, a valuable substance. Embarrassed, she tries to stop him from coming closer, but he assures her that it's okay, and that he accepts her fully. He takes a look with her permission, and is shocked to find that she wet the bed normally. His reaction earns him a punch in the face. At a diner, a woman is complaining about how several of their employees quit during the high season. Because of this, she immediately accepts Anya, who applied to work in the kitchen. However, the manager says it'd be a waste to keep her hidden and turns her into a pretty waitress instead. On his way to school, Ash shares that Eiko has taken the day off. Raymond talks about the upcoming training camp, where most of the prominent figures in the school will attend. The attendees are announced during the assembly, and strong backlash comes as Luca, the student council secretary, is called. The others complain, as the chosen girl barely comes to class. She's a known prodigy, and the youngest person to be granted a Dragonar title. Before ending the assembly, Rebecca comes forward, saying there's one last student who will be attending by special invitation. To everyone's surprise, Ash is called on. As he's questioning the decision, the president later explains that he's capable enough, recounting his various accomplishments recently. Wanting to develop his talent, she established a completely new set of criteria to let him in. As Sylvia and Jessica eavesdropped, Max pushed the door in, urgently reporting that there's a fire in one of the buildings. The 5 of them rush to the site and see an elf-like girl in a coffin. As they wonder if she's dead, the girl wakes up with a yawn, and they realize that all the smoke outside was from her incense. She meekly apologizes for the trouble she caused, and explains that the thing she was lying on was an Ekbladian bed. Feeling hostility, she hides behind Rebecca, who introduces her as Luca, the council secretary and a fairy of the forest. Her people are well versed in herbal medicine and fighting, with many Dragonars among them. The president then asks about her par, Gawain. The girl admits that he doesn't allow her to ride him anymore. They make their way to the dragon, and the president shares that the problem lies in an interruption of the astral flow that connects the two. If it goes any longer, the dragon's life force will be at risk. Meanwhile, Eiko jumps on her bed, delighted that she's replaced the sheets. However, she remembers her dream and rips the blanket apart. Ash returns to the dorm with a bag of crepes. While eating, Eiko suddenly begins to tear up. She finally tells him about her nightmare, where the villain looked like the necromancia, but was much more sinister. What's scarier is that she felt like they'd met several times in the past. Worrying that his par is too afraid, he lies beside her on the bed, wanting to give her a little comfort. While she was touched by the gesture, she kicked him away, as he brought up the bedwetting incident once more. She goes to sleep feeling much better. Eiko is back in school the next day, and Ash sees Luca walking around campus. She went to meet her par, Gawain, who is weakened. She trembles, as she remembers when she fell off the dragon while in the sky. He let out a loud roar, falling back down as she ran away in tears. Relating to how she must be feeling, the boy approaches Rebecca and asks if he can somehow help. Recalling how he rode the necromancia and looked like he could feel its intentions, she recommends that he ride Gawain as well. He and his friends make their way to the Ekbladian's room and find the girl lying in her bed. Waking up, Luca sees Eco's rounded horns and drowsily jumps at her, asking for a taste. Ash and Sylvia are stunned by the odd image they're creating. They later explain the plan to have the boy ride her par, but ask her to try talking to him one more time. She approaches, but runs away as she's met with a frightening roar. Rebecca pulls her back, but she's unwilling to go on. With this, Ash equips his arch and gets near the dragon, but the pen is blasted open with an attack. The dust clears, and he looks up to see Gawain, aiming an elemental attack at him. Gawain blasts Ash away easily. His arch armor barely keeps him safe, but he loses consciousness nonetheless. At the diner, they regroup and talk about their failed mission. The upcoming camp might have been a good opportunity, but as things stand, Luca might not even attend. With the council president's permission, he returns to the women's dorm to talk to the secretary again. While bathing, the forest fairy reminisces of when her par snuggled in her arms as a baby. Just then, Ash arrives with Eco. He calmly explains that their plan failed. They then talk about the training camp and how it might be a good idea to attend with Gawain. He'd like her to try facing him one more time, emphasizing how the bond between breeder and par is irreplaceable. Annoyed by their worries, Eco scolds the humans, saying they overcomplicate things and bicker with the boy. Seeing them, Luca remembers her own bond with her par and agrees to attend the camp. In a cabin, Anya sees Milgaus in the dark. She reports that her infiltration was successful and that she will be following her targets to their training camp as kitchen staff. The man recognizes where the camp will be held, sharing that it's where the ashes of young dragons are buried. The plan is to rendezvous there when the time comes. Left alone, he says that the descendant of Avalon has been born and finds it ironic that she's been named Eco. The day of the camp has come, and the attendees set out to Lake Alans with their dragons. With Gawain going straight to the venue, Luca rides with Rebecca. As Eco rides with Sylvia, she plays around with her body, complaining that Ash always looks at her in a different way than when he looks at his par. They soon reach the accommodation, where the council president gives encouraging opening remarks. For now, they're told to rest in preparation for the grueling days to come, but she adds that playing around in the water for a while should be fine. With this, everyone quickly changes into swimsuits and engages in recreational activities. Angela goes off into the forest on her own. While looking at everyone enjoying, Ash keeps his normal clothes on, unable to feel comfortable showing them his star brand. Suddenly, Jessica's par picks him up, and she drags him away for an impromptu honeymoon. Similarly, Sylvia complains about the thin swimsuit Cosette prepared, but the maid threatens to change her into it herself if she keeps on declining. Later on, the boys are stunned and cheer as they see Rebecca and the princess in their swimwear. As the princess still feels like her clothes are too revealing, Eco appears on Lancelot's back, declaring her mission to stop Jessica from kidnapping Ash. She asks the dragon's owner if she's in, and the two work together to retrieve the boy from the obsessive fan's clutches. At night, the boy sees Luca outside and runs after her into the woods. Finally catching up, he sees her and Gawain in a small pond, with the girl desperately asking that they return to how they used to be. She walks toward her par, but he roars in warning. Ash appears, annoyed that he keeps on pushing them away, and says he's going to force the dragon's feelings out. He carefully dodges each attack, luring the beast into the woods. Meanwhile, Anya followed to spy on them. They chase each other around, and Gawain slips on the muddy ground. Capitalizing, the boy jumps and mounts his back, but he is dragged off by some defensive magic. He falls unconscious, and Anya knows that he'll die if left like that. Remembering how he sacrificed his life to save her, she disregards the consequences and jumps in to save him. The boy's consciousness drifts into the High Dragon workshop, where he sees Navi after a long time. Just then, Gawain's appears on her shoulder, his small size reflecting his immaturity. Translating the dragon's sentiments, she says that he became aggressive, as his back is reserved for his owner. Moving, they reveal how Luca fell off his back while she was in the sky, practicing a secret Ekbladian tradition. Since then, she's developed an unconscious fear of riding, a risky condition if she's up in the air. As such, her par has been rejecting her and severing their bond. However, cutting the astral flow drastically diminishes one's life force, and now he only has 5 days left to live. With a new mission, Ash wakes up in the infirmary and is shocked to find Luca with him. He uses the chance to explain Gawain's actions and how little time they have left to save him. Knowing the risk her paw is in, she steels her determination to overcome her fear. Deep in the woods, Angela arrives at a hidden dragonkind chamber, filled with rare books foreign to man. Just then, Milgaus appears and calls her Anne, a nickname only Prince Julius used. After knocking her out, he tells Anya to kill her, but something in his head stops him, so he tells the girl to leave her. Instead, he'll unleash the necromancia. Ash worriedly looks out of his room, and Eiko suddenly ounces on him from behind, expressing how worried she was for him. Rebecca and Sylvia arrive as well, sharing how worried his par has been for the past 5 days. Suddenly, Luca appears, panting hard, and saying something about Gawain. The students gather around a campfire, celebrating the end of their 5-day training camp. Rebecca leads the toast, saying they should all be proud of their strength. Meanwhile, Ash's small group runs into the forest, but he struggles as he's still recovering from the encounter with the dragon. Earlier, Luca suddenly reported that Gawain had disappeared, and that she had no way to find him with their astral flow disconnected. The council president guesses that he must be in the Willingham Mausoleum, a place long ago where a dragon let himself die, as a sacrifice for his master to live. Wondering if Gawain is pulling the same thing, Rebecca decides to call off the celebration and organize a search party. However, Ash wants to let the students enjoy themselves after their grueling training, and suggests forming a very small party. He, Eiko, Luca, and Sylvia ride Lancelot to their destination, but Milgaus sees them moving just as planned. He takes out the huge sword from before, and it glows red as he recites an incantation. As the group arrives, dark clouds and lighting fill the sky, just like before. The heavy doors to the mausoleum open, and countless necromancia pour out. From the bonfire, the students look around and see figures fast approaching. From the sky, water, and earth, Rebecca realizes what the horde is made of. On the mountain, Sylvia is suspended by the beast's tentacles. Lancelot saves his master and blasts the evil dragons away. They finally see the other necromancia flying to the camp. With no other choice, they leave it in the council president's hands and storm into the mausoleum. With her full armor donned, Rebecca organizes the students into formation, ready to face the enemies. With a loud cry, the fight commences. Ash tells Eiko to summon his arch, but she argues that even a fake arch would put too much strain on his body. With full confidence in her, he asks his par to make him a lighter set of armor instead. He holds her body tight as her consciousness drifts off into the workshop. They soon reach the tomb, but the missing dragon is nowhere to be found. Instead, they see Milgaus standing on a ledge. Sylvia swears on her name to take her down, but he ridicules her, saying the great Veronica should have made a pact with a dragon instead. He then calls her Sylvie, and her eyes waver as she remembers her older brother, who was sentenced to death for slaying a dragon. The ground beneath them trembles, and he warns them that the necromancia there is no mere infant. Recalling the story of the maestro who died for his master, Nuada, the sacred dragon of Willingham, rises. In the workshop, Eiko is on her knees, reluctantly asking Navi for an arch she can copy off, admitting that she's more knowledgeable. She agrees to help, on the condition that the younger par will one day present the finest original arch to Ash. She tries to argue, knowing that it means giving herself up to him completely, but promises in the end. Just then, something notifies them about the boy's predicament, so the older dragon hurries with the equipment. Back in camp, the students have been completely overwhelmed and are being entangled and dragged around by tentacles. Rebecca does all she can to save her people, but the enemies aren't letting up. As Sylvia dodges Nuada's attacks, she notices even more necromancias emerging from the ground. She tells Ash to stay focused, but he's distracted as he sees Luca falling prey to the tentacles. The enemies use this opening to snatch Eiko's body from his arms. They crawl around her, and the boy can do nothing but scream out her name. Fortunately, she wakes up and summons a huge beam of archlight, vaporizing the necromancia nearby. Ash emerges from the light and charges at Milgaus while wearing his new armor. Seeing him fight, his par says his arch is meant for defending, not attacking. With this, he proceeds to chant a defensive spell, which summons several bots. They fly around and hit the nearby dragons with petrifying beams, so the masked man takes them out at once. He also destroys the boy's armor with a single strike, but is hit with a surprise attack from a petrification bot. While the effect stopped at his arm, he didn't spare a moment and ripped it off. Realizing that the princess defeated Nuada, he reevaluates his plans and retreats for the time being. Unable to chase him, they see the intense battle at camp, but they're in no condition to rush and help. Luca walks forward, saying she's the only one who hasn't fought bravely. She then drags Ash over the cliff and shares that she feels confident when he's with her. The fairy calls on her par, letting him drink as much as he can from their astral flow. Together, the three fly to camp, with Luca standing still despite Gawain flying faster than ever. Releasing all her fear and putting their faith in each other, the girl falls and begins the dragon dance. A huge figure appears in the sky, and beams of light rain down on the entire forest, purifying all necromancia souls present. They all look on in wonder, as a graceful green glow fills the night sky. Luca's people are known as elven dancers, and now she's proven why. Meanwhile, Milgauss reports their failed operation, and a man vows to destroy both the Night Country and the Chevron Kingdom. The next day, a postal officer brings a message for Sylvia. It's a letter from her father, telling her to attend the Continental Progress, bringing Eiko and Ash with her. The three head to the Continental Congress, which convenes the 5 national leaders every 5 years. It's the most critical meeting, which decides the future of the entire continent. They're going to Fontaine, the capital of the Night Country, big enough to make Unsullivan look like a small village. In the castle, maids line up and welcome Sylvia's return. She tries to show her friends around first, but the head maid, Frida, sternly insists that she greet the paladin, her father, first. They part ways, and Ash sees how tight the security is around them, which is only natural for the host country. With a backhanded comment, the maid leads them to their room, explaining how Veronica has arranged a personal attendant for them. To their surprise, they're suddenly drenched in soapy water, as Prim trips on a bucket while cleaning their room. Having no choice, they're all given spare clothes for the time being. The maid picks up a broom, but accidentally lifts her superior's skirt. Eiko covers Ash's eyes angrily. Sylvia enters the main hall and immediately sees her father running over to hug her. She quickly punches his face twice, and he falls, reminiscent of her mother's love. Quickly falling back to business, they have a proper conversation about the Congress. To her surprise, her father says that it was Veronica who recommended her attendance. As for her 2 friends, he simply invited them to have fun with, as it's the perfect time to laze around as a figurehead. Sylvia mentions Julius's name and asks if he really was executed. The paladin says it is so, as his crime was too grave, even for a prince. However, it's obvious that he's lying. Meanwhile, Ash sees Eiko mesmerized by the huge city and says they can go check it out. The little dragon's eyes glitter in amazement, delighted by the entire city and how it's nothing like where they came from. She enjoys the night to the fullest, and Anya sees them from a distance. Left to take care of her, the 2 companions are ragged by the end of it. As they're about to order crepes, Eiko notices the boy, longingly staring at the couples around them. He explains that they're lovers who are stuck to each other. The girl nudges at him, saying he can hold her hand if he wants to. As they get more embarrassed, they see a huge ship above, belonging to the House of Whiteshausen. Just then, Cosette suddenly appears to pick them up. They're all given fancy clothes to wear at the banquet, and Eiko is reminded to behave as they'll be among national leaders. Sylvia enters, and Ash is stunned by how elegant she looks. As his par gets jealous, Frida announces that the preparations are complete and leads them into the hall. There, the paladin finally sees his daughter's friends and brightly tells them to enjoy themselves. They were worried about meeting him, but the leader of the kingdom is much friendlier than expected. To everyone's shock, he suddenly grants Ash the title of Dragonar, stating that his par is simply on a different level than other dragons. He takes a knee and is officially knighted with the high position. As Sylvia watches on, she thinks about how he can be promoted another step higher and be granted permission to marry royalty. She blushes at the thought and looks away. At dinner, she asks why the Emperor of Zephyros will be missing from the Congress. Her father explains that it was due to old age. She doubts their reasoning, but the paladin says that speaking comes first and that they must not cause a war. As such, tomorrow's masquerade ball will have attendees cover their faces, allowing them to speak freely. He successfully invites the 2 to join and suddenly puts on a serious expression. The father blatantly asks the boy if he has an impure relationship with his daughter. Not waiting for an answer, he warns him against laying a finger on her, as he'll punish him himself. Meanwhile, Anya returns to her master and sees Milgauss attaching a new arm to his body. He's with another man named Klaus, a noble from the Zephyros Empire. He then goes about a story from a decade ago, when a man wandered into their country, having lost everything after committing a taboo. Moving on, they activate a magic device, which they call the Yggdrasil. It's a tool that'll force the young dragon, Eco, to awaken, and they can begin testing by tomorrow. All they need is a subject. Sylvia dreams about their first encounter with the necromancia, and she realizes that it was his older brother's par, Mordred. She makes her way to the city mausoleum, and is surprised to see her sister Glenn and Avdocha there. Following the incident at camp, they had the same idea, and came looking for Mordred's ashes. Veronica has already investigated all the dragon mausoleums, and confirmed that someone removed dragon ashes from every facility in the country. Hearing this, Sylvia shares the idea that Milgos might be their supposedly dead brother. Despite Glenn's intense reaction, she continues, adding that she felt their brother's par in the dragon that attacked the city before. Believing her sister, Veronica tells her to keep things a secret, as the mere fact that he's alive brings in a lot of risks to their name. Meanwhile, Milgos stares at the Yggdrasil with a smile on his face. Cosette is preparing to join the princess, who's waiting for her in the bath. While enjoying the hot water, Sylvia asks if it's really necessary for her to bathe, while waiting for her dress to be altered. The maid then sternly insists that cleanliness is of utmost importance to ladies in a ball. Eco is busy picking out a dress to wear, unwilling to disgrace her dragonkin race by being outdone by humans. On the other hand, Ash is sprawled out on his bed, believing that nobody really cares what men wear to a ball. Sylvia knocks on his door, returning from her maid's intense massage. She remains silent. Unable to take the awkwardness, he asks about her fitting. She says her gown is being altered, and asks him to hear her out on something that's bothering her. Eco goes through a variety of gowns, until Prim cries on the heap of clothes on the floor, complaining about how demanding she is. The dragon says she won't let herself be outdone, especially by the princess, who's been getting awfully close to her master recently. The maid tries to empathize, saying it must be hard knowing that Ash is going to marry a human one day. Suddenly, she's back in her nightmare, and running out of the room. Sylvia reveals that Milgal is her brother, and that their father couldn't bring himself to execute him. Everything they've gone through so far has all pointed to one conclusion: she just didn't see them. Her mind is riddled with questions, so Ash suggests that he just ask her brother, instead of worrying about it so much. Suddenly, strong flashes of lighting come, and they find their bodies inches away from each other. He hesitates, thinking about the circumstances, but she mutters something, and he goes in for a kiss. However, they immediately come apart as they hear someone knocking on the door. The princess rushes out of the room to fetch her gown for the ball. Meanwhile, Eco is running out in the rain. She's well aware of how Ash will most likely fall in love with a human, leaving her all alone in the future. Not knowing that he's looking for her in the castle, the dragon gets lost and stumbles upon Anya, who's ordering suspicious men around. Just then, Prim's voice rings out, calling for the missing girl. Hearing about the situation, Cosette encourages the boy to proceed to the ball and leave the search to her and the maids. Later, Sylvia approaches him, having heard of the predicament. However, they're distracted as they see Milgos, wearing a mask and walking around the party. Klaus comes between them, claiming that the young man is his servant, and they walk away. The princess recognizes him as the representative of Zephyros. Anya is in the shower, preoccupied with her thoughts. Thinking about how she aimed the gun at Eco earlier, she assures herself that carrying out her master's orders is her priority. Prying Ash's eyes away from Milgos, Sylvia encourages him to focus on their dance, as she thanks him for listening to her woes earlier. They finish soon after, and Klaus approaches the princess, asking for a dance. She accepts the offer, but passes it on to his servant. The maids expand their search to the outside, and see Prim lying on the ground. The princess dances with her brother, and takes the opportunity to ask the questions plaguing her mind. He refuses to answer, but his way of dancing confirms that he's from the night country. Just then, Cosette comes running in, saying they've found the missing maid. Having regained consciousness, she apologizes, and retells the things she said to the dragon. Sylvia explodes, and scolds her for saying something so foolish. Ash calms her down, and the others report how Eco was abducted in the old palace. Based on how they took her, they must not intend to kill her, so the group thinks about where she could be hidden. In Klaus's airship, the experiment, shooting beams with immense amounts of mana at the dragon, and trying to force her to awaken. She contorts in pain upon being hit by the 12th shot, and she's again reminded of her nightmares. The head researcher sets the beam to maximum output. Pulled apart, Iko can feel her connection with Ash fading, and she finally realizes her true feelings for the boy. The beam hits, and Yggdrasil suddenly malfunctions, detecting an unknown mana source. The device explodes, and Iko emerges from the rubble, glowing with power. On their way to the airship, Ash grips his arm, knowing that something wrong is happening, as his sleeve burns from his starbrand. A huge flash of light hits the sky, and radiant wings spread around a huge capsule. In the middle of it all was Iko, her eyes completely blank. However, an incredibly sinister presence waits behind her. Ash leads Sylvia to the huge capsule, asking her to steer Lancelot in that direction. However, her paw won't move as told, and the boy says he must be feeling something nearby. The dragon drops them off on the street, and several other maestros flock toward the egg-like light in the sky. Suddenly, it began to crack, and eventually free whatever was inside. Now in the sky was a colossal dragon, surrounded by the maestros. Ash's brand pulses, and he's certain that the unfamiliar dragon is Iko. Veronica and Glenn march through the halls, worrying about the dragons that abandoned their masters and how the country could fall if someone were to attack. On the balcony, Klaus makes a show, complaining about how one of the host nation's dragons is destroying his airship. The paladin tries to calm him down, but he refuses to, already having a plan prepared. The huge beast turns their way, and everyone runs in fear, all but Milgos. Veronica demands that he take his mask off. He obliges, and says that while he may have the prince's appearance, the one inside is a different being, Mordred. He's the other mind, who was hidden in Julius's paw. He's the true heir of the Nehelenia kingdom, who fought the sacred empire of Avalon for many years. The prince caught on to his presence and plotted to take him out. So, the dragon possessed his body instead. Continuing, he says that dragons don't just bond with humans for the astral flow, they consider them livestock as well. Knowing this, Julius committed a taboo. Incredulous, Glenn confirms that his friend did not go mad and rushes in to fight the enemy. He's easily swatted away, and Mordred addresses Iko, the Dragon King of Avalon, and says he will now take over his body. Julius falls, and the dark spirit that was left behind envelops the first princess. Suddenly, Veronica found herself helpless, the familiar tentacles running around her entire body. A voice brings her back to the room, where she's completely fine. It's Julius, who assures her that the spirit possessing him is no longer there. Mordred's soul has already taken over Iko, so the three of them have to act immediately. Just then, the huge dragon swallows a huge amount of power, expediting his transformation into his sinister self. In the workship, Navi greets Mordred, who refuses to believe that she's as unimportant as she lets on, and guesses that she must be Dragweiss herself. He asks for her help, but she's already sided with the humans, especially the young boy. Rejected, the evil spirit resorts to violence. Knowing that Iko is in pain, Ash begins to move, believing that he can turn the tides by riding his paw. The two convene with the other party, and the princess falls into tears as she sees her brother's warm smile once more. He then approaches the boy, saying they must sever the invader's mind out of their friend's body, and that he's in charge of doing so. As long as Navi holds him off, the evil dragon cannot be completely reborn. They fly towards the dragon on Veronica's ship, which Julius forcibly took over, after threatening to expose his sister's embarrassing secrets to the entire army, which was her extreme obsession with Sylvia. They're moving Sylvanus straight ahead, and the boy is given control over when he wants to jump off. Just then, Mordred looks up and shoots the ship with powerful beams. He complains about Navi not resisting anymore, but her voice rings in his head, claiming that she is. Several maestros surround the beast and bind it with glowing chains of light. However, the ship can't take much more, so the boy has to jump when he can. He leaps and glides down to the dragon's back, but sees the ship crash into flames, the prince still inside. In her subconscious, Iko is locked up in a birdcage. While trying to pry herself out, Navi appears, looking a bit more tattered than usual after dealing with the enemy's tentacles. She asks for the little girl's hand and transfers the information about the situation. Moreover, she shows Ash climbing the huge dragon's neck, refusing to give up, despite being knocked over multiple times. She questions why he'd go so far for someone who's been a complete nuisance. Asked how she can help, Navi dispels the cage and instructs her to dedicate an arch to him as the Princess of Avalon. As long as her feelings for him are true, it should materialize without a problem. Mordred breaks out of the chains, and Ash free falls into the sky. Fortunately, Luca rescues him in time, and he sees that all their friends have gathered to ride along with them. They work together, serving as defensive, offensive, and mobility for the boy. He drops to its back, but it turns around and blasts him with a powerful beam. Suddenly, his par's voice rings out, and he finds himself in an astral plane beside Eiko, who's telling him to accept her feelings. Back on the battlefield, the blast gets deflected, and he emerges clad in an arch, originally made by Eiko. Following her instructions, he summons its special enchantment, the Holy Sword, Excalibur. With this, he easily slices through each attack and defeats the dark spirit with one slash. The dragon dissipates, and his precious par is saved. Deep in the city, Avdocha and her men find Anya, bleeding badly. While things have settled down, Mordred was unfortunately able to escape, and everything is left to politics. Ash's visitors are leaving him alone with Eiko. He apologizes for cutting her horn during the battle, and says he'll be her knight, whatever happens. However, she isn't satisfied. She wants something more, and made sure of it in the workshop. Their eyes convey their feelings, and the two share a long-awaited kiss.